Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life.
Well, Justin, I feel like I can reach across the bay and see you. I'm over in Apollo Beach. You're right in Clearwater, so it's rare that we have someone in Florida. Most of the guests, based on Landon's network, are successful people from Nebraska. So it's good to have someone on my team for once. Welcome to the show.
Well, cheers. I'm happy to represent the Sunshine State while Nebraska's still a little chilly.
It is. It is a little chilly.
We're getting there
Although
though, Justin.
you
You
had
are.
Landon, you had 80 degrees the other day, and then it was like
And then it
30
went and
degrees the next day, 50-point
no, I mean
swing.
we had no, it was a 70-degree swing and it went from 75 on Tuesday to a full-blown blizzard on Wednesday. We were without power for over 12 hours. Some of the some of the communities are just getting it back today. I think they'll probably have everybody back online today, but yeah, we got a boatload of wet snow, rain, and about 60, 70 mile an hour winds.
What's crazy to think about is think back to where like, there was no technology, not even any like newspapers or anything like that. And like these people are just living their lives and they're like, oh, it's so nice out today. And then they get, and then the next day out of nowhere, they get smacked with a freaking blizzard. That must be like a mind fuck. Just
Cruising around in
experience.
your covered wagon, like with your shirt off one day, chilling, and then all of a sudden at 3 in the morning it starts raining, sleet, and then yeah, snow.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
it'd be
I like how
different.
Landon takes us to the Oregon Trail. Like,
Damn right.
yeah. And then you get bit by
Because
a rattlesnake, and then
I
that.
know my bougie ass partner David would not survive more than 2 days on the Oregon Trail. That malaria or whatever that always got you in the game would
Yes,
eat him up
yeah.
real quick.
I was trying to remember if it was bubonic plague or what
Yeah,
it
the guy
was.
can't get a fade once a week in his wagon. He's out.
Hey man,
Well,
that's a part of
anyways.
lifestyle.
So, Justin, did you grow up in Florida or are you a transplant like I am?
No, man, I'm a fifth generation, which qualifies me as a native Floridian. My grandparents, it was really cool. I just found out where my grandma grew up. Like I saw her address on something in my aunt's house, and she's actually still alive. She's 90, and she now lives in Central Florida in the Brooksville area.
Hmm.
And I was looking through, I found her address and I looked it up, and she was like maybe, I don't know, 5 blocks from downtown St. Pete in what was just a
Really?
fisherman's village. So it was just some dudes, actually using the pier and the marina and the cove for boating. And her dad was a fisherman, and she was I think she was in the first graduating class of the St. Petersburg High School. It went through its entire like cycle, and they tore that building down. So like since she graduated, they built one and tore it down, and now whatever the new one is what it is. But
That's
that's how
wild.
Floridian I am.
Well, I will say you're not that Floridian because for being a native Floridian, you do not strike me as the stereotypical Florida man.
Right. You haven't seen my gator skin belt yet, though.
Okay.
No,
Well, I
get
only
that.
see you from like your chest up. So if you happen to be wearing that, you'll have to send me a picture or stand up
No.
afterwards.
No, I fantasize about being that cool, but I don't. I do have friends who like they have gator skin that they've killed themselves and skinned and turned into something, which I just think is the next level of Florida man.
Yeah, that's commitment. Well, let's dive in, Justin. So first off, we appreciate you being here and spending some time with us and adding value to our audience. And when we had our initial scoping call, to say I was impressed would be an understatement with all the things that you have going on. But before we spend some time and unpack that, I'm curious to know how it all started. So I'm guessing, and I could be wrong, but I'm guessing you didn't get out of high school and start your agency that you have now.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe start with just a quick, what are you doing now to help set the stage, and then bring us back to sort of your career path that led you to today.
Yeah. I mean, for the simplest way to put it is we have a branding and marketing agency that helps organizations stop losing money on marketing that's not working or stop missing out on opportunities to grow. I mean, that's at the core. We're really a growth-centric, performance-based agency that helps in both of those areas of marketing and branding, which, it makes us a full service agency. So we have about 13 specialists that are full-time staff and another 18, 20, give or take, contractors that work part-time or full-time depending on the season of what, and that's a really super strong, like small, mid-sized boutique agency model that we have kind of settled into after 10 years of basically the typical founder thing, which I think is a lot of people can kind of resonate with. Like you get good at doing something, and then people want to hire you, or you get like promoted, and people keep affirming that what you're doing you're good at, and then more people are underneath you. And so I, eventually got to a point as a creative director in a couple of different larger nonprofits that I had doubled or tripled in short periods of times, and found myself just like kind of I couldn't really go any further, and I was like, but I could start an agency, and you could be a client, and so I just started helping nonprofits that way. It was really funny. It was there was a week where it's like I was working on staff. And then within just like a month of leaving and taking them on as a client, I had like 5 or 6 times the amount of work, that I was doing before. It was just like such an immediate boom. And so I was like, cool, let me just start hiring my friends and finding that like typical entrepreneurial journey. And I had always been entrepreneurial. So I started teaching guitar lessons when I was 16. My friends were working fast food jobs. And I was like, you're making like $6 an hour. This is really going to date me here, but you're making like $6 an hour, and I can make like $30 an hour teaching guitar lessons. I'm not really qualified as a guitar teacher, but I can play well enough to teach beginners. And I was like, man, this is just like a way better gig. And I've just always had that in me from mowing lawns to teaching guitar lessons and figuring out a better path. And so it was just kind of an obvious thing for me to go. I gotta take on clients rather than just be an in-house creative director. And so a lot of the things I oversaw and the team I oversaw, I just translated that to working with multiple clients and building systems and processes. 10 years later, we've got a really healthy organization. I built it on the principle of hiring people who are better than me at everything that I do, and which is really great relief for me because when a project gets handed off from me, it gets better, and that's kind of been the history. We've not done a ton other than just trying to do the best work we possibly can. We haven't done a ton to grow ourselves other than just trying to do the best work we can. And I think word of mouth and referrals has been kind of our go-to. But we've kind of put ourselves into a little bit of niche of it, working with nonprofits. We've also found a really good connection with faith-based organizations as well, which could be for-profit faith believers that are owning and running businesses. Um, and then you've got stuff like manufacturing and B2B. So really like B2B consultative sales has been just a professional services industry that we just continually keep getting a lot of help, a lot of people asking for help for, and we've kind of found a really good niche of working in that industry over the last few years. So those are kind of our four categories. That's a little bit
Hmm.
about the company. It's called Verse Creative. It's VERS. It stands for fresh in Dutch. And we like to bring in a fresh perspective. When you hire an agency, you need that. You should expect that.
I love that. Going back to the comment about your friends making $6 an hour, it's interesting to me how, and everyone's wired differently, but I've had the view of, some people want to have security with a job and they have a boss,
Yeah.
singular to be specific. Whereas when you're more entrepreneurial, let's say you were giving 10 different people guitar lessons, it's like, well, you have 10 bosses. And if one of
Yeah.
them stops working with you, well, you still have nine as opposed to needing to go find, another job because you were fired from McDonald's or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
always interesting to me. It's like a mind shift of, you actually have more security after the initial legwork of building whatever you're building. You have more security as an entrepreneur than you do, a salaried person.
I don't know
I
about
love
more
that.
security, but you definitely have more control.
More control. Again, it's
Let's go with that.
that initial,
The advisor in
whatever
me would say, yeah, yeah,
3 to 5 year
exactly.
period of like making it and probably making less than what an employee would make. And then all of a sudden there's this inflection
Mm.
point where you're like, whoa, where did this come from?
There you
Um,
go.
what was that like, Justin? So if I heard you correctly, you went from working inside an organization to then starting an agency. I'm curious to know, like, what did life look like then? Were you single? Were you married? Kids, no kids? Like, I'm trying to get a sense of like the risk that you took going out on your own.
Oh man. All right, I will try to keep this. Cut me off if you're like you're going too deep here.
No, go.
I don't know how to summarize this super well, but the deeper side of the story is I married my high school sweetheart. So we met in high school. I married her, and I went off to school at Palm Beach Atlantic University, and she got diagnosed with a disease called Lyme disease. That was she got like it's a fairly common disease now, but 20 years ago it wasn't that common, and we didn't really know what it was. And there's also like 300 different strands of it. So if you know somebody with Lyme disease, you may not know the same Lyme disease that somebody else has experienced. And it's kind of a really crazy, very challenging disease. Um, but we got married and despite the disease, and we like for 18 years of marriage, we fought it and she fought hard. And about 10 years into our marriage, we had a little bit of a reprieve in her disease, and we ended up getting pregnant. So um, we're now stepping back 10 years ago. Kind of the middle point of that journey as I'm dating myself. I'm about to turn 40. So just to give you guys some perspective there, um, we got pregnant and we found out we had a Down syndrome daughter. And so we had kind of an amazing blessing for us was we didn't think we were ever going to even be able to have kids. But here I found myself, I was working 80 hours a week. I've never been a lazy guy. I've always picked up extra work, freelance gigs, um, even when I was working full time, because oftentimes I was doing really good work for an organization, and people inside of that organization, like volunteers or attendees, would say, "Dude, can you help me with my business? Because the stuff you're doing here for this organization, this nonprofit, looks better than my multi-million-dollar business. Can you help me?" And so that was like kind of common, and I was working, nonstop all the time, covering these medical bills. And also being a caretaker as the disease progressed and got worse. And so add on top of that now a special needs daughter, and I have an amazing support system. We have a really great family um, in Florida here, and so when we actually moved back to Tampa after living up in Ohio and Tennessee, um, and a large part of that was just because of the support system. But in the midst of me starting and launching the agency, she lost her job, like the ability to work. Finally, the disease just got to a point where she couldn't maintain her job as a NICU nurse, and she loved it. I mean, it was something she really loved doing. It probably never brought in more than 100 grand a year. Didn't make us rich. It was exhausting, it was hard work, but she loved doing it. And when she stopped, I had to figure out how to make up that extra income without going into debt. And so luckily we had never like struggled to live inside of our means, and we were not in any major financial trouble, but I knew something had to kind of change. And um, so yeah, after that scenario kind of really triggered me to go, I know if there's not room for me to grow and make an extra 100 grand working inside of a nonprofit as a creative director, I got to figure out another way to make this work, and make up that difference. And so that's really the trigger that kind of pulled it all together. They all kind of came together, and I'm super grateful it did. I mean, again, it was hard, but in some ways it was much easier, stepping out of a lot of non-important meetings and annoying, day-to-day structure, and having the freedom to go make, you know, whatever I needed to make happen. And so I just started hiring people um, as I got contracts and as I got jobs. And one of the things I did really well at the beginning too, that I would encourage any of your listeners to do, is to study like with somebody who's already built a successful business, who's like, a step or two ahead of you, but also understand somebody who's like 5 or 6 steps ahead of you. So that way you know where you're going and what kind of things you needed. And I figured out really quickly I needed a good way to retain clients, and I needed to figure out a really good way to acquire clients. I had relationships, but the typical agency thing is like somebody calls you and they're like, I need a website and I have like $2,500. And you're like, what? I don't know how to deliver something that you think is going to help grow your business by $250,000. And it's going to do all this kind of stuff. It's going to get you new customers. It's going to handle e-commerce. It's going to do all this for $2,500. Um, and so I learned the process of how to actually acquire those customers for the appropriate price, and then how to build in the appropriate like retainers. And that kind of saved me as an entrepreneur who didn't really have a sales team or a sales force. Early on, I'm super grateful for that little bit of knowledge and insights that I gained because I know a lot of guys are still just doing gig to gig. They still haven't figured it out. They're entrepreneurial, they're willing to work hard, but they don't have those systems to acquire and retain people.
So based on that, it sounds like the transition was pretty risk-free. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Nothing could go
That
wrong here.
well, no, that's a lot, dude. And I think what's powerful about that, and that as a side note, I also love how you're like, hey, cut me off at any point. It's like, where the hell was I going to cut you off in that story, um, without being an absolute jerk? But that's powerful, and I think that that's something that needs to be emphasized with folks is when you have so much going on that like you can't afford to fail. Like
Mm,
there's a lot of power in that. And the other thing that I take away with what you shared too is, if I understood you correctly, while you were working at your job, you still brought on an extra client or two or three or however many to like prove to yourself of like, okay, I can I can do this other work with a different organization, still have, great impact. And the sacrifice of that is you just work more for a period of time and do both, right? At,
yep.
at the typical job, you're working 40 hours a week, maybe 50, and you have plenty of other time if you're efficient with your time and structured with your time, um, to make that leap of faith that much more palatable because you've proven to yourself, at least in a micro scale, that you can do it. And
Yeah,
I think that's pretty powerful too.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
your story is the definition of burn the boats, right? No going back. We're on the beach burning the boats and got to make it work. And that's awesome. Kudos to you for having the guts to do it and not crawling in a hole and saying, why me? And yeah, that's some powerful stuff.
What was that like? So you're now out on your own. You start to expand and bring on more team members.
Hmm.
Did you start off by bringing them on as contractors, or did you start off by bringing them on as employees? Like, what was that like? Because that's something, when people think to themselves of, I want to make 100 grand, I want to make 200 grand, I want to make $1 million, like whatever their number is, that's
Yeah.
what they want to make. But if you want to build a company, you need to make that and then plenty more so you can afford to hire other people. What was that process like?
Yeah, it's super straightforward. I brought on contractors first. So, I brought on a copywriter, I brought on a video editor that I had worked with and that I had a relationship with as a part-time contractor. My first big commitment was a contractor that was full-time, was the video editor. Um, and then I brought in another video editor and then a project manager. And by that point, now with five of us, we were doing websites, video projects, and branding work for the most part. We hadn't even started doing a lot of digital marketing at that point of the agency. We were mainly just a creative house doing brand work. And so I think by that fifth full-time person, they were like, "Hey, I would feel more comfortable if this was an employee like status, if it was a W-2 instead of a 1099." And so I said, "Oh, that's fine." And what I realized is like finding people that like stabilizing my team with people who actually valued the stability or the essence of a W-2 was good for me. in building a stable of talent and resources, and understanding like where is the difference between like, okay, well, I'm going to pay for these benefits, or I'm going to pay more for this, the flexibility of a contractor. I'm going to pay these taxes, or I'm going to pay this contractor more hourly. And I quickly found out that I could, for the most part, offset any of my additional costs of an employee, um, with the stability that they were presented or the benefits they were presented. Um, and it ended up working out really well for me to kind of slowly build. And as I kind of talked about the makeup of the agency today, we're still kind of in that model of like, we bring contractor on part-time, we test them, they might get to have a lot of hours, and then we fill that seat. And then every once in a while, we just have a seat that opens up, or a need as we grow, that is like a director level, somebody with 10, 20 years of experience, that I'm going to come in and I'm going to pay a lot of money to, for a full salary position.
Yeah, but I think that's awesome. I mean, it essentially lets you get to test drive the employee before you commit to it,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I
Exactly.
think can't think of too many of us who in the owner space wouldn't love to have that as an opportunity. I mean, you get to see their work, you get to see the work ethic, the end result.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and when you like, what's the risk or the cost of doing that? You're missing out on people who are so stable based that they won't do that, or they're not driven enough to work extra to do projects for you while they have another job. And what I've found is that actually helps me disqualify those people that are so risk adverse that they're not willing to do that, or they're not willing to work hard when their season of life needs that. That they wouldn't even take on extra contract work for me. Like, what does that show, like, as far as the kind of employee they're going to be? And so it's actually disqualified people who have been like, no, I was just looking for a really safe, easy gig. Let me know, call me when you got that salary ready for me.
Yeah, because I think we all, as business owners, want to find employees who act and think like owners, right? That's the
Yeah,
hard part.
it is the hard part. But in some ways, right, it makes it hard. In some ways, it makes it easy because when you get those people, you're stronger and you're better for it, and you don't have to micromanage them.
Well, and the reality is, if you find that person, you got to find or create a seat for them because they don't come along all that often either, right? Whether the payroll's ability is there or not, it's like, hey, if they're good, ultimately they'll pay for themselves. You just got to get them on the bus.
That's such a good point. I think I did not understand that at the beginning at all. It's just like I did it by intuition, but I didn't know that it was the right thing to do. There was just some times in my life where like people needed a bigger salary than I was ready to give, and but I knew there was talent. I knew that like if I could float this long enough, they're gonna bring a much better ROI. And I'm still learning that. Like there's a case of a guy I brought on to do sales, and like I had a relationship with him. He didn't work for me. Maybe he had done a little bit of contract work, but I had worked with him. And an opportunity arose where he's like, man, I could use a full-time job to do, to work with you. Like that would be a great thing. And I was like, I don't have the money. I really can't justify it. And I was like, you can come in as a sales guy and generate revenue. And it just didn't work out. Like he just did not, it didn't work out, but he was such a cultural fit. And I knew there was so much talent there. A couple of years later, he has transitioned to be like one of our most valuable team members. He's culturally brings so much to the team. And he's now doing better in sales now that he's not having a sales role or a target to hit every week. He's been generating more sales and marketing opportunities for us than anybody else. And so, thinking, one of the chapters in the book is actually that you've got to think about your staff like a long-term investment. And so often I think we don't allow our employees the opportunity to get an ROI because we're looking for such a short term. We're like, we want this like good return as soon as we hire them. And I hear this, the trigger that like always like flags me when I'm talking to a younger leader is like, oh yeah, but it takes me more time to tell that person how to do it than if I just do it myself. Like I can't hire somebody like that. I'm like, whoa, that's such a short-sighted thought. It's like,
Hmm.
what are your systems and processes? How is your training set up? What is your long-term investment into that person look like? And how can you build this into something that can replace 80, 90% of what you do? if you can put that in for a year and then and look at getting that return for, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, I'm having the same conversation with our team right now, right? It's like we've got a couple of the support team that's pretty well established and just can kind of bang things out. And we've got three younger individuals that have joined the team. And I'm like, the same thing. I could just do this and be done with it in 5 minutes, or it's going to take me 20 minutes to walk them through this. And I'm like, look, we got to slow down to speed up because I don't even want you taking that 5 minutes. You shouldn't have to take that 5 minutes in order for you to take the next step of where we want you to go, right? But
Yeah.
I get it. It's a fine line.
It's going back to the idea of contractors versus employees, and I have a question on this inflection point. So one of the benefits of having a contractor is the expectation isn't that you're the sole person providing food on their table, right? Because they're a contractor, they're part-time. And
Yeah.
as a result, if work slows down at all, well, you just don't pay them because they're not working on any projects, and there's, not as much guilt on your end because the assumption is that they have money coming in from other sources, right?
Yeah.
And then when they become employees, whether the work is there or not, you got to pay them. So I'm curious to know, like, at that inflection point, how did that change things for the company regarding your own marketing, sales, business development, and making sure that there was consistent stuff coming through the door so that you weren't, moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket just to make payroll?
Yeah. I'm probably not the best expert in that because I feel like I'm so employee centric and contractors too. I care so much about the team. I really just believe in doing everything you can for them, and not babying them, but like paying and taking the hit. I think a lot of people are in business to make as much money as they can, and I like they would be a much better person to answer the question from a financial standpoint, but I really believe in helping people and making them better. And so the approach I would say is like I have been taking money from the left pocket and in the right to cover payroll for 10 years. In fact, I was just talking to my director of operations the other day, and it's just like, man, like there's never like because we sometimes will influctuate by $1 million account. So I know that at any point they could give us notice. And so at any point, like there may be a 90-day notice in which I won't be able to pay myself a dividend or my salary if I don't replace that $1 million worth of work, And so um it's not maybe that drastic all of the time, but there are certainly times, throughout every year where you lose a client or two and you go, holy smokes, is this all going to fall apart? You lose a couple of big accounts, so they slim way back. Um, and I've just always tried really hard, David, to live with enough margin where I didn't need to pay myself. I'm not having to live, paycheck to paycheck. And I will just know that like I'm the first line of buffer. And I mean, when I say me as the sole owner of the business, like my profitability, which I, count on as revenue.
And
Um,
This goes back to that whole risk versus control conversation. So yeah, there's still
yes,
plenty of risk in the business owner side of things.
well, I would also
absolutely.
hypothesize too, Justin, that um, let's say you lose that $1 million account and then you have a conversation with your employees and say, hey, like, I can't pay you this
Yeah.
month. My guess, if you did that, is that you would not find the next $1 million account.
Hmm.
Um, but when you do the right thing, it may not be perfectly aligned within that 90-day period, but shortly thereafter, you get $1 million account, or you get, four $250,000 accounts, and it makes up for that because you did the right thing in that moment, and you're rewarded for that.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
I think
two
if you
things.
pour into your staff and team like you do, Justin, I would argue that you can also be very vulnerable with them and explain to them, hey, guys, we just lost this client. This is what it does to the revenue side of things. And I'm a big believer in transparency with your team. I know a lot of us business owners out there, they do not, oh, if they know how much I'm making, it's like, who gives a shit? You're also the one that put your on the table and, took the
Yeah.
risk to jump. And so you should be making the majority of it. But, I think you can ask the team for a lot more when you're very transparent with them and also have poured into them and say, look, I'm taking a hit. We all got to take a hit. Or we can all step up to the plate and go find the revenue to replace us, right? And again, if you've got the right people on the team, they'll dig deep and go find the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've experienced kind of all of the above in the circumstances with losing accounts in the sense of like when finances are tight, I have certain team members and contractors who've been like, "Hey, I understand. I'm here for you. Long term, I'm aligned with your vision." And then I've also had employees who are like, "This feels a little too like shaky for me. I'm going to find something more stable, a bigger company." Which we all know is not really more stable
Hmm.
at all. Um, but the thing that I have really taken away the most from like the big account losses is it was just an unhealthy structure for us. And I would say like as an entrepreneur, the account, to get into the nitty-gritty of like a personal story was a dream account for me. In 2017, the agency is just a few years old, and a friend of mine was a creative director at a company that was one of the larger drum companies in the world. And so I don't know if you know much about drums, but like the metal loud part of the top, the drum is set is called a cymbal, and like drummers don't buy a lot of drum shells, but they go through a lot of cymbals. Not as many as they go through sticks, but they
Hmm.
They beat
cymbals
them
is
up
like
pretty good.
it's a big part of the drum business for a music instrument. And so I got the opportunity to work um, with the second largest cymbal company in the world. They're called Sabian Cymbals, and we came in and we started working with them as a manufacturer doing creative work. And so they do like a huge trade show. They've got multi-million-dollar marketing budget. They've got e-commerce that we were rebuilding the whole e-commerce experience. They also have a really fun part of their account was that they have artist relations. And so like when a band would when a drummer's like touring, the biggest part of marketing for them is getting content from the drummer. And so I found myself in 2017 like designing the brochures and doing a bunch of art direction and design work for this brand. And over the course of 3 years, it went from like a couple $100,000 to like $700,000 to like $1.2 million worth of work. And I found it's like our agency, we had multiple staff members who were just focusing on this one account alone because it was just so freaking fun. Um, I'm sitting there, backstage in a huge arena with the chain smokers who are like a top, 10 most played Spotify band of 2019. And we're interviewing and we're working on a really cool bunch of media and content with the drummer. And some of my like favorite bands, some of the best shows, even guys I didn't think I would like, Justin Timberlake comes through and his drummer plays Sabian. And so I'm on stage for Man of the Woods tour, which was an amazing, just like these kind of experiences where you're just like, I can't believe I'm getting to direct this as the creative director. Um, and it just sucks you in. These big accounts, they just suck you in because they're so sexy and they're so much fun. You leave the work side of it and you're like, I can't believe I'm even getting paid to do this. And we were doing all their social media. They were the fastest growing social media music instrument company other than Fender guitars. And it just seemed like everywhere we turned, we were helping design new products. We were working with artists. We're growing the social media. We're doing all this really cool content. We're getting to do some really fun stuff. And they trusted us to do all this really cool stuff. And we just got sucked into that vortex of like more money, bigger account. And I totally lost sight of the agency, which as the owner and as the entrepreneur is really where I should have been focused, is what is best and healthiest for the agency. To build something really good and long lasting, you do not wait out like 25% of your revenue in one account. That's the,
Well,
and
that's
it's
one of the
something I think,
things. Sorry to interject, but that's one of
yeah,
the things. So, Landon and I have our SEPA designation, Certified Exit Planning Advisor, and one of the main reasons why companies lose value upon sale is a customer or vendor concentration issue. And literally
Yeah.
the number is if it's over 25%, it's an issue. So you were right there. Can I ask uh what caused you to lose that account? What did you learn from that?
This is gonna be a mind blower. This we found out in 2020 in January that the Asian market, because we were doing international for them, the Asian market shut down for this disease. Um, and then the European market and all of the sales. I mean, immediately, $50 million for the sales for this company just started drying up. Because drummers can't play. There's no gigs. I'm talking about COVID.
Mhm.
There's no gigs, there's no assembly, and drummers are not playing out. They're not getting
And living
paid.
in
They've all
Florida,
lost their
you're
jobs.
like living in Florida, you're like, why are you guys stopping living?
Try being a small town Nebraska and like, what's this COVID thing going on?
So things dried up and then they just didn't bounce back or
Yeah, so
um
they were like, hey, they cut their marketing. They had to restructure. They laid off like a bunch of like they have had a few hundred employees. They were based up in the middle of nowhere in New Brunswick, Canada, like in a small town. They laid off a bunch of their employees at the plant, and the marketing team, took a huge hit. Um, and so we gracefully like wound it down with them and handed over all the IP and access to everything. And I think they ended up finding a much um, little Canadian marketing company to help them,
mm,
um, kind of trickle along. And the truth is, like, I've stayed in touch a little bit with them here and there, but for the most part, um, I'm not 100% sure, where they're at with sales
yeah,
and how they've bounced back from COVID, but they haven't bounced back enough to call us to say we're ready to spend big budgets again.
I
Um,
gotcha.
but for me, that was like such a big wake up call. And we basically just said, hey, that was a year where I didn't make any money. We scrapped as much as we could, and I retained all of my employees. So I was like, I don't want to. I've put hundreds of thousands of dollars into these employees. If I let them go, and this bounces back in 6 months. I was really thinking like a long-term investor and going like,
Hmm.
this is a short-term loss. And if I let any of these really good people that I've trained for 4 or 5 years, if I let them go, like I'm just really going to be in a world of hurt. And so I'm so grateful that I did retain them, but it was financially challenging for me. But in the long run, we're stronger, we're better because we went through that. And then we had another larger account that we went through a similar circumstance with where we got sucked in. It was really fun, and I was kind of losing sight of just focusing on the agency. And that was last year where it kind of dissolved itself out over the course of a year. And so that wasn't as abrupt as the COVID and out of the blue as the COVID,
Right.
but it still hurts anytime you have a 25-30% account that goes away. And so we're now at a point where we don't have any accounts that are more than 3 or 4% of our entire revenue. And that's the healthiest we've ever been as an agency. And I'm committed to like if another big opportunity comes our way, I'm going to focus on what's most profitable for us in the whole scope of the work. And I'm going to bring in other partners to diversify that account so it doesn't get lopsided again with us.
And I bet you're out of all that, your employees, when they most certainly had friends and family who were getting laid off or let go, during COVID, and then they look at you and they're like, wow, Justin kept us on. Like, I'd imagine that
Should
if they weren't
should create some
willing to
loyalty.
before, they'd run through a brick wall for you, after that, because I mean, they're on the creative side, but they can still somewhat do math and they know that and they know that like, sometimes the math doesn't math and it certainly wasn't mathing then.
Yeah.
But you still took money from your other pocket to keep them afloat. I'm sure they are immensely loyal to the vision now.
Yeah. I don't know how much it changed. They knew what was going on. They were informed. And the hard part, and I don't know if we used to do like really lavish trips. Our culture spent a lot more money.
David, you hear him?
No. Oh, I think he's back.
Uh, lose you guys.
Um, yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Little audio spike, and then I think we started recording at like 12:40, so we are 36 minutes in. I'll make a quick note for our team. Um, all right, so Justin Price, 36 minutes in. Okay, so I think we lost you when you were saying something to the effect of, they knew what was going on.
Yeah, I think it was important that they knew what was going on, and that I think that always will retain more um, loyalty when they have clear optics and transparency on what the business is doing. And I think in the case of probably a lot of your listeners, like the encouragement to open your books all the way to being able to do profit sharing, even if it's just a small section of profit, just to go, hey, if we achieve these numbers and if we hit this profit margin, you guys are going to get this is what the bonuses would look like.
Hmm.
But it requires a total different mindset shift for a lot of entrepreneurs to go from that like lifestyle business where they run every expense through the business and it's all gray, it's very gray, to being able to be fully transparent. And I think that helped us a lot. I think about 5 years into the agency, I realized I needed an operator or some sort of controller to help me not be so risky. And that required me being more transparent and slowly moving away from that lifestyle business way of financing it.
Hmm.
Yeah, once you
That I
get to
think is the biggest loyalty.
the enterprise value mindset, it's a big shift, right? I'm not
Yeah.
just running this for my paycheck. I'm running this for value. I'm running this for, lifestyle for team members and to make an impact. And it's a total mind shift. But once you get there, I think the whole landscape of what you're looking at and working on looks totally different. At least my experience on that is that's been my experience at least.
Yeah. There's a principle that I've heard from multiple people who are selling their agencies or people who are helping sell businesses, of like, I guess there's a principle I've taken away, which is if you're not building your business to sell it, or if you're not like thinking about selling it, that's not an excuse to build a bad business.
Hmm.
And what I've found is like guys like you who are specializing in helping people exit you have so much value to a business owner who doesn't even want to sell, because the principles that you guys would say make it a valuable business still apply to the owner. Like, why would you not want the thing you own, that you run, that you work in day out, to not be the principles you build it off of? Like, that should be the most valuable thing it possibly can be. And if you ever put yourself in a position where you have to sell, like God forbid you are no longer able to operate and you need to sell it, you don't just want to be an owner.
Or God forbid you're no longer here and your wife steps into a complete shit
Exactly.
show. Now at least you've got a management company and things in place and contracts in place. It's the first thing that I say to business owners when talking exit planning is saying, look,
Yeah.
you don't have to sell this thing, right? But the most profitable and max value you're going to get for your business is a business that is ready to sell at any time.
Yeah.
Like it's the cleanest way to do it. And if you just want to keep growing and building, that's great. But your business should have a clean set of financials that if a buyer is interested, you can show them. Maybe
Yeah.
the IRS gets a different set of expenses, but at the end of the day, you need to have one of each, and you need to have contracts locked in. You need to have diversification in what your customer base looks like, and you've got to have a team in place that could handle something if you're no longer in the picture to do that.
I want to take a little bit of a different direction. So we had talked about this on our scoping call, Justin. Um, one of our most listened episodes and where we got the most feedback on was a short, I think it was like a 6 or 8 minute episode. And I think I all only talked about like an AI note taker. like of all things. But we got the most feedback on that. I'm curious to know how you guys are integrating AI into the business.
All right. I apologize if my audio gets unstable. I'm not sure I've got good signal here, but
No, you're
um,
good.
feel free to cut me off if anything. We realized a few years ago that we needed to stay ahead of the curve. I think we were late to the game on digital marketing, meaning like there was agencies who were doing Facebook ads and Instagram ads, as soon as they became available. There are big ad buyers buying all sorts of really complex um, strategies and opportunities, like buying IP addresses and targeting with geo targets. Like, hey, I'm going to hit all the people with the cell phone in that particular area or at that competitor's business. Now you can even do things like um, targeting your competitor's website traffic,
Hmm.
which is pretty cool. Like that's a more recent thing. And so we realized that we were late to the game on digital marketing as a creative agency that started to say, hey, we got to perform. We can't just be creative. We got to actually get ROI. We got to generate leads. Um, and so we said, well, like there's a new wave of that we can be much more effective with, and we would have basically the same playing field as everybody else, and that would be focusing on AI. And so we basically dug in when when 2020 hit, we said, hey, we got to work on productization. We got to figure out how to incorporate better tools to make us have a competitive edge. And we actually took that downtime with that loss of the really fun company, and we did a lot of work we didn't really enjoy. And we just started saying, hey, every week we're going to have an AI test uh, meeting. And so we had a group of people that were working on tools throughout the week, and we would get together and we would kind of report on how is this tool functioning, starting back 4 years ago. And so what happened is we started most of the tools we would try sucked, and they were a
Hmm.
complete waste of time, and everyone was like, what are we doing? This is awful. Because we thought like in 2 months we're just gonna find a piece of gold that's gonna revolutionize the industry and everyone's gonna be using it. And we'd be 2 months ahead of them or something. I don't know what we thought. But that's how we kind of started getting into AI, and here we are 4 years from now, and I will say there's not a single piece of our agency that doesn't have AI assistance in it. Meaning, let's take a brand project. So I'm going to do a deep dive research scrape. And so we have an AI tool that's going to do a full scrape of all your competitors. So competitors you don't know have popped up in the last 5 years because you're no longer at trade shows and a small little booth style lifestyle. These guys are taking your leads and they're popping up for keywords you didn't even know you should be working on. So we're looking at things like industry keyword scraping. We're looking at things like social media presence. We're looking at things like getting any kind of good lead gen that's happening on the internet. Um, and right off the bat, we're being able to finally help people be competitive just by that one tool before we even start talking about your brand positioning. Ultimately, like branding is we talk about it's emotional response people have when they engage with your organization. So it's like, how do they feel? It's not the logo. The logo is just a word mark to identify the feeling. Um, but branding is creating that feeling, and that's only really done with a lot of consistency and clarity. And so if you don't know what your competitors are doing and they're telling your potential market, you're screwed because you might be saying something that's not even relevant anymore to your audience. Your competitors may be saying something that is not relevant, and you have an opportunity to say something relevant. Um, and we will use that in the first part of any account, like just doing really deep diving research. That used to take us a week to 2 weeks with a research team of one or two people pulling all that together and filtering that into a presentation and also like filtering out a bunch of stuff that wasn't really very accurate, right? Like so, and what I mean is like before we would have maybe like done a Google search, right? Like, but now we're getting in like a 250-page document of all this scraped information about your market and your competitors. And then we're having, AI analyze all that information and say, what are the repeating themes? Like, where is this market crowded? Where is the language crowded? What colors are crowded? Where's there opportunity for us to strike with this client? Um, And that one single thing right there, like, would have cost 10, 20 grand worth of t just human resource time. And now it's something that we can usually deliver for like under a grand. Um,
Wow.
and
You
so
go
like
from
that's
like a
just,
week or two to, you
yeah,
know, a couple hours to half a day maybe to at least it may not look pretty, but have all the information there that then needs to be put into a presentation.
yeah. And with the truth is like we don't have enough time to go over every AI tool that we've integrated, but I would say with confidence, like that there's not a part of the business that we're not that we no longer have AI involved in that part of the business. Even, accounting and running numbers and projections. We're doing our own projections, but also when we're doing a marketing projection plan, um, we can now look statistically at real numbers and we can say, hey, here's based on all of this information, can you analyze this and give us much better projections than we ever could with an analyst that would take, 40 hours to do it. Um, and so everything from like really good creative work, like sketching out logo ideas. Now we'll take 20 sketches, we'll throw it in, and it'll pop out 150 options. And an art director can look at those 150 options and go, these are the 10 I want to present to the client. Here's why. He's still the art director, he's still doing it, but he now has like a sketch assistant that's giving fully beautiful rendered, final logo work that a client can see rather than like rough sketches that were, would have taken weeks at a time. In fact, it's changing us so much to just really kind of break the mental state of the conversation is like when we would start with a client, any project, we would have a process in which we would build out a roadmap. Hey, where do we want to go with this, whether it's marketing or branding, where do we want to go? We want to figure out the audience. We want to really understand. We would do all the market research. We would look at all your historic data. We look at your current technology stacks. What are your opportunities? Where are you missing major things? Are you even searchable? All these different things, right? And we would go through it, and it'd take about 90 minutes to 2 hours per meeting that the client would have to give us of their time, just so we could be on the same page as them. Because they might be like in a new industry that we didn't work with before, or they might just be in a new market that we just didn't work with before. And so it would take 90 minutes to 2 hours, and we would do 6 meetings, sometimes even 7 meetings, just to kind of feel like we could have an intelligent conversation of how we thought we could get them where they wanted to go faster or for less money or whatever it was that was holding them back. Now, and it would take us a week of work in between each one of those. And that meeting, that whole process of building a roadmap could cost us 15 or 25 grand. And we were trying to solve multi-million dollar problems. I'm not pretending like this was like, oh, you need a new logo and here's an idea for a logo. It was
Mhm.
like we were looking at full user experience paths, testing those things out, seeing how all the drips worked, looking at some complicated tech, but nothing too crazy. But it just took a lot of time. And that 6 week process we have figured out now almost with the support of AI tools, we're doing it in real time, and so we can have like a researcher, we can have somebody working with us in the meeting. And by the time that 90-minute meeting is up, the entire week's worth of work that we used to do could be validated with the client. So they would tell us something. And then while we're continually working, the researcher is doing all the research and we could validate it in 90 minutes before the client gets off the call. Was this what you were saying? Is this right? Does this seem right? Did we miss this? Did you know this? And now we're not going a full week with not no, getting any response back, and their time is being used super efficiently. And now we can pretty much turn out a roadmap in like 2 to 3 meetings. And oftentimes it's like a third of the time that the client ever needed to invest. And now they're getting way more information. It's presenting way more value. And we can do it for like under 5 grand. Like we can make money. They can be really happy. And they're like, this is like the best 5 grand I ever spent.
Well, what's cool about that too, and I'm probably under selling this, but previous to AI, because people are like, AI is going to replace certain jobs, most certainly, but also it gives people the opportunity to skill themselves up to work on higher level tasks.
Yeah.
Um, but, and again, I'm probably not doing this justice, but if you got double the amount of clients that you had in, say, 2019, you
Hmm.
would need double the amount of people to see those projects through. But by integrating AI, you're saving half your time, let's call it. So you could double the business. You don't need any more people.
Yeah.
which is pretty wild to think about. And assuming that those people in which they have certain functions of their job that are easier or totally delegated to AI, if they're of the mindset of wanting to constantly improve and improve their skill set, they're going to be just fine. It just allows them to work on higher level stuff.
Well, I know that you guys get this, and I think what you said is right on, David. But your listeners might they may be in a position of thinking that like, should we be afraid of AI replacing people? And I really stand behind this thought process that like embracing AI is the best way you can actually retain and love your employees and do what's best for them because you can now allow them to be more valuable to you when you apply those things to them. So it's not about replacing them, it's about replacing the work they no longer have to do so that they can do the work that they uniquely can do, which is
And
oftentimes translating something to a client.
well, and I was going to say, and frankly, the stuff, at least in its current state, right? AI changes every single day, but in its current state, it's taking the stuff off their plate that they don't even like to do, but they
Yeah.
just have to do as a part of
It's
their
the
job.
mind-numbing stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And if you can get that out of the way for them, it allows them to actually work on what they want to work on. That's a game changer.
Well, we always say that like the sweet spot for any employee is when they have high challenge and high stability, right? Like nobody wants high challenge but low stability. That's like uncertain, feels like crap. You feel frustrated and mad. You may be like really stable, but like no challenge. You're just bored,
Hmm.
you know? And so we always feel like, man, high challenge, high stability is where we want all of our employees to be at, our team to be at. And the idea of going like this will allow you to take on bigger challenges and give you more stability within your role because the better you can learn to use these tools, the more valuable you are to us and to our clients. And so therefore, we are all winning by focusing on you guys getting into AI. And I think that I think people who have not are not maybe tech forward or don't think as much about investing in their people are like, oh man, is this a hack that I can just like cut all these people out? Like it is a hack for you to be able to do more with less people. So if you're wanting to grow your business, I think it's vital. It's by far an area that is worth you mastering and spending every waking minute you can in. Um, but the reality is like when you think about the investment you've made into your people, and again, maybe we've had some really great people that we love, but we haven't replaced them if they've left because, for copywriting, we're way more efficient today. Um, we don't just like plug it into ChatGPT and copy and paste that into our client's work, but it's doing a lot of editing or it's doing a lot of initial ideating. Um, and so, I would just encourage anybody who's like, I don't know I need to do this. It's like you will be outdated and you will not be able to be competitive. And if you're lucky enough to still be hanging on today, like I don't know how much longer you really can be lucky
Well,
enough.
that's the thing. It's not like well, 10 years down the road. It's like it's like a 6 month to 2 year thing before you need to really step up and make some changes because
Yeah.
it's not slowing down.
Yeah, I
I'm
would
I'm
say
always
if you're thinking
hesitant.
about it, you're already behind, right? Like
Yes,
that's
totally.
my yeah. If you're like, oh, should I be doing this? The answer is yeah, you should have been doing this, right?
I'm hesitant to like throw out exact resources because they are changing every day, and I hate dating my content. The book, I'm teaching most people how to think through technology, whether it's blockchain or AI, like how it's going to change the way we're treating our people and what we're doing with our teams. So you'll find like up-to-date resources on links from the book, but for the most part, like I try not to just like focus on, oh, this app does this thing today because it will be
Mm.
different in a week. But to break my rule for one thing, check out Lovable, Lovable.app. And what will really blow your mind is now, remember when I was saying that we would do the work now in the meeting rather than
Hmm.
like taking a week to do the research? So right now I can go to lovable.app and if we were having a website meeting or an app meeting, I would be using this AI tool to start to build out a prototype of your website a fully functioning, it will be writing the script as you're talking, and I'll be adding notes and things as we're talking. And before the meeting is done, your website is actually ready to export in HTML.
That's
The
badass.
development
That's yeah.
work is insane. So if you're like a web developer, you're most likely fully embracing this. But if you've been paying a lot of money for a web developer, that cost should be going down significantly in the next year.
That's sick. Yeah, I got it up here. I'll toy around with that myself. And actually, one of the which you just provided a perfect segue. So one of the questions that we ask all of our guests before we sign off is a book that's had an impact on them, but you're a little bit different in that you have a book in which I have not read yet, but I do have the copy right here, called The Creative Squeeze, of course, by you, Justin Price. Talk to us about what this book covers, why someone should consider scooping it up. As I mentioned before, somewhat jokingly, mostly serious, there are some pictures on a handful of pages, so it's very, very readable. But why should I read this book? Because I still need to. And then, of course, others, why should they scoop it up?
Well, I wrote the book out of an opportunity to go, man, I think everybody is feeling it, the squeeze right now. As tools like AI are coming out, I think in the creative world especially, there's two problems that are happening at the same time. The first one is technology is developing at a point in which it's doing a lot of the work that we used to need to hire somebody like a graphic designer to do. So today, Canva can do, and a graphic designer's job can do about 75 to 85% of what a graphic designer used to do. And we still need a graphic designer maybe to help set it up and to make a selection. But the 40 hours of work every day or every week that they used to have to do can now be done in 4 hours. So what is that graphic designer supposed to do with that tool? And then the replacement of that time, what how is it making us better or worse? That whole dichotomy that's happening within the creative realm, as these production tools specifically, putting all your film footage into a linear editor and doing a rough cut and being able to take all my ums out, to take out all the negative space or to pick up the cuts. Like we don't need an editor to do that. That was a junior entry level job for us. That was a $25 an hour job for a long time. We billed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of billing for that, and now that job is no longer needed. I need a junior editor to do something different now. And so the squeeze is that we've got leaders who are being told to lead these creative people and figure out how to do what used to be a team of 10 with like two people and all these tools. And you've been asked to do all this, and what's happened is like it's like how can you get the most out of every dollar with inflation, with the cost of everything just going up in the last 4 years, especially. I've just found that creative leaders are feeling the squeeze in every way possible. And it's like, how do I get the most out of my team? And I think the idea of like we have some really great visionary creatives that have set a stage like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, right? You can't deny what they've done. The thing is, I think a lot of creative leaders idolize the way that they led because of the results that it got, but they're not leading a team that's trying to build Tesla and change the entire automotive market. They're leading a copywriting team, or they're leading a
Hmm.
web development team that's building 5 websites this year. And yet they still think that like treating people by just pushing people to their absolute limits, demanding 100-hour work weeks, and squeezing the most out of people is the way, and just going, oh, we can just push them to do the most prolific work of their life, but they're not getting prolific problems to solve. It just doesn't mash up, and you'll just see people quitting left and right. I'm just going to freelance instead of actually joining a team that's going to do some really great work. And so a lot of the book is written to debunk the myths from these prolific leaders and from other leaders in the past who've set a stage of really poor leadership for creative people. And creatives are one of the one unique group of people that they have to put out work based on their emotional state. Like they're trying to make a human connection, to solve a specific type of problem. If I'm writing a film, one of the things we do at Verse is we do like branded documentaries, and we do branded like feature films and short films telling a full story. If you're writing a documentary style film or a even like a fictional story for a branded piece of content, you're trying to make a very human connection. And it's one of those jobs where like if you're dealing with a bunch of crap and you have a leader who is just treating you like a bookkeeper, meaning like if you do the math, if you put in the work and you do the calculations, the math is done and my job is done. But when I'm trying to write this branded piece of content, um, and I'm emotionally going through a bunch of crap, like the leader treats me the same way because those are the leadership principles that were taught in the leadership book. What ends up happening is you just have somebody who's like, there's just a major disconnect, and you've got burnout, and you have people falling away from their passions and their mission of what they were excited about in the first place because the leaders are not able to lead and to connect with them well. And so this book just kind of was the journey of the last 20 years of me leading creative people, making all those mistakes and just trying to debunk them. So there's 9 chapters in there, kind of breaking up the key myths that I believed, tested, found out they were wrong, and kind of the solutions that I made at that. So that's the book, and it is really designed for entrepreneurs and for anybody who is trying to figure out how to lead this emotionally unstable person that we call a creative. Not obviously that's a heavy stereotype, but they should be a little bit more emotionally in touch to do the kind of work they're doing oftentimes. And so how do we value that? How do we get the most out of them? It's a little bit different than the approach most people take.
I love it. I also like to, as I was flipping through it, there's QR codes. Presumably that's the links that you were referencing. So the QR code stays the same, but where it takes them may change as tools change. So I like that you're staying on top of it like that. Well, Justin, we appreciate your time. Everyone tuning in, we appreciate yours.
Congrats on the success, Justin. You've been awesome.
Thanks so much, Landon.
Where can folks find you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they inquire about working with you?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram at Justin Price Creative. On Facebook at Justin Price Creative is the same thing as what's on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn if you're a LinkedIn type of person. And then you can email me directly, Justin at verscreative.com. So you can see our work. You can see a little bit more about the team at verscreative.com as well.
And what was sorry to make you repeat yourself, but I'm trying to connect with you now. What was your Instagram handle?
Yeah, Justin Price Creative.
Justin Price Creative.
There's a picture of my bride and my daughter, myself.
Perfect.
That's me.
Awesome, dude. Well, we appreciate it for everyone tuning in today. We appreciate your time and attention as well. And we will catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks again, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life. I'm about to come